Good afternoon. Welcome to the Clergy Couple webinar. Today we have Father John Rallis and Irene Rallis with us. Father John and Irene have been serving the parish of St. John the Baptist in the Chicago area. I know it's some people call it Des Plaines, some people call it Des Plaines, so I'm not really sure what the pronunciation is. They've been there for 23 years. Prior to serving there, they were in Asbury Park, New Jersey for about 6.5 years. Father and Irene have 3 adult daughters, 2 of which are married. They have 6 grandchildren, and one of their daughters is the wife of a priest in the Chicago area also. All of their daughters live near in the Chicago area, which is a blessing for them, one that some of us as clergy couples and families do not have. Before we begin, I'd like to just offer a few housekeeping items. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little box that says Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar that you would like to ask Father John and Irene, please don't hesitate to type your question in. Just click on the box and type in your question, and I will keep track of those as they come in. And depending on what it is, we may wait until the end, or we might take it in the middle of the webinar. We'll have some time at the end for additional questions. As clergy families, we are the same and we are different. We have many of the same struggles of marriage, family, parenting, finances, all of the same joys, challenges, opportunities, and struggles that all of the others in our parish have. But also, as clergy families, we have a very unique place with our husband leading our communities of faith. And whether we like it or not, we are actually the most visible people in the parish. I am the most visible woman in our parish. My husband is the most visible man in the parish. Our children are the most visible children in the parish. And as a clergy family, we are the most visible. So we are called to be models as clergy families. And sometimes that involves some responsibility that there are times we don't really want to take on, but it's a reality that we live with when we choose to follow this calling that we have had in our lives. And being clergy families brings on some very unique blessings, opportunities, and challenges. And I would like to start out by asking Father John and Irene, what would you consider to be some of the unique blessings that you've experienced over the years as a clergy family?
Irene, go ahead.
I would just begin by saying that at both parishes, we were embraced fully with love. Our children were. That was huge for us, considering some of the things that we had heard at school or from other clergy. Special opportunities when you go somewhere as a priest's family for worship, for veneration of relics that perhaps aren't always brought out. Because the priest is there, you have a special blessing, the generosity of parishioners with their special treasures that many times they will offer to you or bless you with. So those are a few of the blessings.
What are some of the ways, some of those special treasures that you've received over the years from parishioners? Can you think of any?
Yes, I can.
Well, I think many of the professional parishioners in services,
Mm-hmm.
in concern about our family and our children,
Mm-hmm.
helping in a very tangible manner, which was either with their time or with their talents or with their resources.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened multiple times. So the people really opened their hearts, and we are grateful for all the generosity that we receive from them again and again.
Right.
They were understanding of our time. They were understanding of our family. And I think that was something that has stayed with us.
Yes. And also, when we were in New Jersey, one of the families there invited us to spend some time with them in their home in Greece. That was a great blessing. And another time we were invited to go on a boat with our family for an extended period of time with another family. So those were great memories for us, and manifested the love that people had for us in their actions.
We had very faithful family in our church in Minneapolis that each year they would offer their cabin to us and to 2 other clergy families separately. They would schedule their time at their summer cabin around the 3 weeks that they offered to 3 of the clergy families in the area. And that's something that we will never forget. It was such a treasure for us each year to be able to go there.
Yes.
It's interesting, in an occasion when Elpida graduated high school, she received her diploma from a parishioner of ours that was at the local school board. Eventually, she became the treasurer and the president of our parish council.
But she made sure that she saw the list of the kids and she said, I want to give this person their diploma. So it was very special.
You know, you have had a very positive experience in the way that you have been embraced in your parishes. So, and we have too. We talked about this a little bit before we got on. And we haven't had some of the same really difficult challenges that some clergy families have had over the years. And so I am going to ask you, what are some of the real unique challenges that you've experienced too?
Well, definitely there were some, I will call them small betrayals, people that we trusted, and for some reason or others did not work out. And we're very surprised that little by little they were disconnecting from us. They were distancing themselves from us. We did experience that in both parishes, I may say. And I think that one of the greatest challenges is how to keep an equal closeness or distance from the parishioners. Whatever you choose, closeness or distance. I'm always of the idea that we must have a healthy distance in the parishioners and to be as equal as possible.
Right.
And never to make obvious any kind of preference.
Yes.
Any kind of preference towards one person or the other person, particularly when it comes to pastoral issues.
So how does that look in terms of then you not making obvious anything, but are there relationships that are closer than others?
Yes. And I was, when we were discussing this, I said to Father, so-and-so who happens, our daughter baptized her daughter. So our 3 daughters have baptized children in this parish, but with the blessing of their spiritual father, I mean, we did not want to impede their spiritual family that they wanted to make, and there's never really been any issue with that. No one has, at least not to our face or in front of us, but this particular person that I am particularly close with, I never talked to her at coffee hour. I mean, we talk during the week on the phone, not always, but I never, I make my rounds and I just don't really ever talk to her because, our daughter baptized her daughter and it's just has worked for us to do that.
And prior to those events, I did call in the families and I said, you will hear many things, good and bad. And you have to know that you may be challenged out of nowhere. People are going to look at you differently only because our daughter baptized your daughter, because of that spiritual relationship. So I did warn the people that people do look at things differently all of a sudden. So don't be surprised if that's.
So you anticipated some of the possibilities and you tried to be preemptive.
Yes. preemptive strike.
Human weaknesses.
Which we
And
all
you know, you are in a very similar situation to us. You have never lived near your families. Father John, you being born and raised in Greece, and Irene, you being from Long Island. Even though those few years you were in Asbury Park, you were closer to blood family. But how do you manage that as a family? Not having blood family near you. How did you do holiday? How do you do holidays? How do you create a sense of family and rootedness for your own children when you don't have blood family living nearby?
Well, when we got to this parish, it was almost like the Lord brought together 3 or 4 families, one of which was us, that had no family locally.
Mm-hmm.
They were planets like we were, you know, and somehow our children were friends with their children. And to this day, we're still, you know, having Pascha and Christmas with these people.
Mm-hmm.
It worked, you know, and
we
also
has that ever created difficulties with others in the parish for you to have, because my guess is it does sort of become known that you spend holidays with a certain group of people. Has that ever been an issue?
If people were jealous, I never felt it from anybody. Okay. You know, of course, you know, people will talk behind your back, but you know, we had to minister to our children and let them have some kind of family. And these people, the girls are still friends with they're all the same age, and some of them are priests and some of them are Presvytera, some of them are not, and they're still all very good friends.
So you found a way to create family even with parishioners. Right. So what are I use the language of friendships with boundaries.
Yes.
As clergy families.
Yes.
What are some of the boundaries that you have created in your friendships, particularly those that are a little bit closer to you? Boundaries in those friendships. What are some of them?
Well, it happens that some of those friendships also, they are spiritual children. So what is said in confession stays in confession. Is never shared with anyone. Mm-hmm. Secondly is that whatever is shared between the two of us, husband and wife, it's personal, stays personal. Right. So any kind of frustrations or disappointments that we may have, we do not share with these people.
Right. Even though you might share a little bit more than you would with, you know, someone you're not that close with, you still, if something's a very private issue, I would never share it. And what I would say is, you know, to the other priest wives, never, no matter how close you think you are with someone, never expose your husband and never speak ill of him. You know, it's to say, oh, you know, I don't know what, they don't put the dishes in the dishwasher or they leave their socks on the floor. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. No, you do not speak ill of your husband, because that will just go like wildfire in a parish.
But those small things, you think they're okay. Is that because it shows the human side? Is it simply because you're in a relationship where you can be a little bit more transparent without being really private?
Yes, that's how I would put it, Carrie.
Okay.
You know, you can do compline together after dinner. If Father's not after dinner, you know, coming back to church for a service. But no, and sometimes I have said to him, we don't pray together. He said, we're praying together every liturgy. And I'm like, yes. Well, okay.
I mean, there are some exceptions. I have to say, this summer we were in a little chapel out in the countryside of the island of Tinos that we visit often, and we did the Paraclis together.
Right. We were able to do that when more on vacation time than
or when we travel. I think when we travel we do more than when we're at home.
Well, that was another thing. When we would travel, because we did a lot of road trips, and that's how our kids saw the States. We had a prayer book in the car, and we would do, usually we're up that early, first hour, third hour, sixth hour. If it was the time, someone would the church into the car. You know?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when our children, if in the mornings, every once in a while, we were able to do either the epistle or the gospel reading before the kids left for school.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're in this season of life, 2 of our 3 out of the home, you know, sometimes in the mornings we'll do the readings together, and we might sit down for 10 minutes and discuss them, though sometimes it turns into a little bit more of a sermon on the part of my husband, but that's okay.
Oh, good. That's a good sermon idea for Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, we have not really established a regular rhythm of prayers. Sometimes we will pray together, a compline service or part of a Vespers, or some of the, you know, prayers of the day during the Lenten season, that kind of thing. But we've never established a, quote, rule of prayer as a couple. And we're different in the way we pray, and I think that's okay.
Yes.
And we have 2 different languages too to pray. So we have one more.
You always pray, you know, in your, as Metropolitan Catholics would say, in the language of your heart, which is your mother tongue.
Yep, and yours is Greek, Father John, for sure. And yours is English. Yeah.
So yeah, we have sparred on that a little bit during prayer, and I'm like, fine, I'll just read the translation, read it in Greek.
What other kinds of rhythms did you have with your children growing up in terms of nurturing your relationship with them, especially father to children? Because the research now is unequivocal that the primary factor that determines whether or not the faith will be passed on from one generation to the next is the warmth of the relationship of the father with the children. And the research is also showing, and this isn't quite as connected to the clergy couple, but I think it's important for us to keep in mind that if both parents attend worship regularly, the children are more apt to attend worship when they become adults. If only the father takes the children to church, that's the second highest. If it's only the mother, that is the smallest percentage of people will then attend church regularly as adults. So oftentimes, and I've heard this from a lot of clergy children, you know, my dad was always off taking care of everybody else, and mom took care of us. And we basically got lost in the shuffle in terms of any relationship with our father. And I remember when we were at seminary and we're just getting ready to finish, a wise, respected priest, we were in the car with him one day, and he said to my husband, he goes, "Harry, please don't make the same mistake that I made. My kids are adults now, and I'm just starting to get to know them because I never nurtured a relationship with them when they were growing up. Don't make the same mistake that I made." So I'm asking you, particularly you, Father, what did you do to nurture relationship with your daughters individually as well as collectively? Any specific rhythms or intentional things that you practice to do that?
Well, I have to admit from the very beginning that there's always more that I could have done.
Of course.
And I have to admit the fact that there are sometimes that when I was playing with them, I was not present. I was there, but my mind was in other places. So sometimes I share that with my son-in-laws. I made sure that, and because Presvytera held a pretty strong house and everything were in place, always she will tell me their school activities. And I used to attend some of their school functions. I used to go to all their school conferences. I was there with Irene and the teachers. So we were aware of I was aware of what was happening, and I was part of that. and then the activities. I did have the opportunity to take Presvytera Nicolia. We went for 3 weeks to Greece by ourselves. I don't know why, but we did that.
How old was she at the time? Do you remember?
16. Either 14 or 14, I think. 14. Something was
You
happening.
went for a wedding or a baptism.
Yes, anyway. And this year will be with Katerina. I don't think I did with Elpida anything special.
But I think that maybe you didn't get to it yet. I think the most important thing was that Father was home for dinner every night.
Well, I'm not there.
Oh, I'm sorry. That would have been the first thing for me.
So yes, that's true. I was there for dinner 5 to 7 or 4 to 7. That was a bit easier when I was in New Jersey. For 6 months, I was here by myself. When I first came to Chicago, I was here by myself, but I did make sure that I called them every night at 5 o'clock. That was the time the whole family had gathered. And I used to go back to New Jersey every 3 weeks to spend a few days with them. That was a transition for us.
That was because the parish also allowed him to do that.
Right. So, transition for us. And I think the vacation time that we took, every year we took a vacation.
Every year.
Every year was from
clergy laity till the end of July, usually.
It was between 3 to 4 weeks vacation. And many of the people, some of the home visits, they were with me. They used to play with their friends. And I was with the family. Home visits when we go to bless homes. Sometimes people were inviting us.
Yes.
To have a meal with them. So they were with us as well. So they were with their friends and we were their adults. So I think that's what I recall.
And just the thing about being home for dinner, it's interesting because, we wouldn't answer the phone between 5 and 7. It just wasn't answered. And, PKs, they'd be, if somebody died, it's still too late. It's too late. You can go later. That was their kind of humor. But people in the parish knew that Father wouldn't be here from 5 to 7. And several of the moms said to me, that's setting such a good example for us that if the priest can do that, we can do that in our homes. I'm not taking credit for that. I'm just saying, God worked through that. And it wasn't, it's 10 miles to our house and then 10 miles back. So we don't live, that close to the church either. But, thank God it was able also to be an example to some people.
So instead of people in the parish using that against you, that Father's not available, it was used more as this is a model for us. And
like no one should be available at dinner time.
Yes. Okay.
And nowadays we try. I don't know how we try to maybe every 6 weeks or maybe once a month to gather all the families together. Our families together.
So you still do that to this day.
With 2 priests in the family, it's very difficult.
But you make the effort. Yeah. But you're still making that effort to do that. And your son-in-laws are both also from the Chicago area, so their families are there too, correct?
No, Anthony's from Tucson. His family is
okay. All right.
Yeah. But we also, in New Jersey especially, we would go out for brunch on Sunday, all of us. Of course, we'd see a lot of parishioners there, but we did that in the beginning here, but then the kids' schedules, because church was never negotiable, but Sundays if they usually didn't have something else, but it just, as they got older, it became a little more difficult to go out every Sunday.
And more expensive.
What was that?
More expensive. To take everyone out right now is very expensive.
No kids' meals anymore. And now kids' meals can be, some places around here, like $10.99 for a kid's meal. It's crazy. But anyway. Something you said made me think of another question. I just lost my train of thought. So I'm going to move on to another question. This is one I hear a lot. What's an appropriate way, or how have you managed, because I think we do this differently, how much you share with your wife about what's going on in the parish outside of the obvious, anything in confession absolutely stays in confession. But things outside of confession that may be pastoral concerns and cares, struggles, perhaps these small betrayals that you made mention of earlier. How much of this how have you managed this and navigated it in terms of what you share with Irene? And then conversely, Irene, sometimes as clergy wives, we get approached about things too. Do we tell our husbands everything about what people tell us when they approach us?
I discreetly share with her things, discreetly. And also I have to say, if there is, sometimes I do ask the person if I'm at freedom to share that with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I ask is so Irene can pray for these people. That's the only reason. If, however, something is threatening, maybe that's a very strong word, is endangering or threatening my wife or is going to, then I would share with her if it is something, an attack towards my wife.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to say it. I would pamper it. I will make it, I will try to present it in a nicer way than it was perhaps said to me, the way it was told to me. I would not say it. Sometimes people tell us out of how they feel, they say it in a raw way. So I take the raw way and I cultivate it so I can present it in a nicer way so it doesn't get deeply hurt, because we have somewhere or another, we overcome sometimes the hurt through the sacraments, through the divine liturgy, through prayer. But how it's going to fall upon Irene, I think I do have a responsibility to protect her of how I present things.
Well, I don't remember any of those things, so maybe that's a good thing. But I have to say that Father is so discreet that sometimes I find out things from parishioners, or someone will be sick and they'll be talking to me and I'm, hi, how is it? And they're like, Presvytera, didn't Father tell you I have this or I'm going through that? And I feel, kind of like an idiot because I haven't tried to console them or maybe approach them in a different manner, but that's up to him what he does tell me. You just need to have discernment.
And then goes the other way around. If I feel that something doesn't sit well with me, I would need her to protect me. If it is personal between a parishioner and the priest, then I would have to confess that to her so she can become my protection.
So first you were talking about if she's perhaps being attacked, how you would approach it, but then when you're being attacked, how you approach it when you tell her about it.
Well, not in being attacked, if I'm approached in a way that is not a proper way.
Okay.
Being approached in an improper manner.
All right, put some flesh to that. That's a little too theoretical for me. Can you be a little more concrete with what you're saying there? Can you give an example?
Well, I can give an example. I'm trying to phrase the example in a manner. If a priest is approached in a way that feels that the other person wants more than spiritual guidance and starts feeling emotionally attached to the priest has to use his wife as a shield.
Okay.
So a woman who may be attracted to a priest, is this what you're specifically talking about? That's one instance. Yeah, and it happens, yes. And then how would your wife, then in that kind of a situation, how is your wife your shield? What does that look like?
First of all, I'm accountable to her. And secondly, she may direct me, she may suggest things that I should do in order to avoid.
A woman, yeah. since I have that perspective.
Yep. And this is something I think everybody encounters at some point because of that close relationship that especially spiritual father to spiritual children, sometimes emotional attachments can become something that is not healthy and holy and what it needs to be. So
if your husband asks you to go with him somewhere, it's not always because he wants to, that sounds nasty, but spend time with you, but he needs another human being there.
Yes.
So, and the wife represents, the relationship that he already has.
Mm-hmm. And in those cases, would you tell your wife that you have some concern about this, or would you simply ask your wife to be your shield without letting her know that it's because of this concern?
If it is in an email, I will show her the email.
Wow.
And I will just be honest with her. So I will tell her, this is what I think. I mean, we've been married for almost 40 years.
Yep.
38.
So 38 years at this point.
Those you need a lot of discernment there, and maybe even the help of a more, well, you've been a priest 30 years, but I want to say a more seasoned priest, but maybe a spiritual father or something.
We have to play it on the safe side.
Absolutely.
Always.
And sometimes we wives pick up these vibes too that our husbands are just clueless about, and we need to protect them in those situations too.
Yes.
And I have to protect my wife, as I said in the very beginning, about how people, or even my children, but my wife as well, how they come and they say, your wife is such thing. Well, I'm not going to go and tell her.
Right.
The only thing I heard was that I was aloof when we first got here, but you're scared in your new parish. Anyway.
Now, let's segue into our children. I've heard clergy families say they never tell their children anything negative about what's going on in parish life, and they completely shield them. Others that all they talk about around the dinner table are, we have both extremes of the kids just being exposed to everything, the kids being exposed to absolutely nothing. So I'm asking you, how did you manage some of these difficulties in parish life or with particular people that sometimes became difficult given the ages of your children and the different seasons of life that you are in now or were in at when you were raising your children?
I have to say that Father really never talked about the parish, but never offered any difficulties. Okay. You have to have a lot of discernment. It depends on the severity of the issue, its importance, the personality of your child, their age. If it's something you think they're going to hear at coffee hour, you have to make a preemptive strike. Because if it's something that's buzzing, you need to tell them. Mm-hmm. If it's something that concerns a family, that they're friends with that family's kids, and maybe that family's pulling back, you have to explain that to them. This is why they're not inviting you over anymore, or this is what's happening with the parents. It doesn't have to do with you, and I would never told them about any issues between Father and other people. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, discernment and a shielding. I think as they got older, they pick up on things on their own.
Yeah, because they're in our parish now. Elpida and Caterina, they're here in the parish, so they pick up everything. Now, do they call me up? No. They don't call me up to say, I heard that, or no. Not really. No. Maybe Caterina a little bit more than.
Well, because she still lives with us, so she's, says, when they live with you, they kind of have that carte blanche.
When we had to move from New Jersey to Chicago, of course, we sat them down and we told them this and this and the other, and there was a preparation.
Right. Now, when you were in Asbury Park, you were by yourself, right? You never served as an assistant under somebody?
No.
Okay. So for those younger clergy couples that where the husband is working as an assistant, I think some of the things we've been talking about come from a place of that we have control over how the kind of stewards we are of the time that God has given us. We don't have somebody else telling our husband, I'm speaking as a wife now, telling our husbands when they have to be where, and sometimes that conflicting with. So we may have to do another webinar at some point with, for the younger couples that are still working under proistameno, who may have different ideas about family life and about marriage and those sorts of things. But we're leave
learning about that from our son-in-law and daughter right now, because he's an assistant.
But my discussions with second priests, my discussions that I have with them, my suggestion will be that they have to be open with their proistameno. They have to sit down, they have to come to the office and says, Father, this is what is happening in my life. And not to be afraid. And most proistameni, they will accommodate them in their best ability, as far as I know.
Because you've always had an assistant.
In my situation, I had always, I was by myself, but at the same time, I was minister in the first case to Father Psilas, that he was a stroke victim. I replaced him. And when I came here, the retired priest stayed. He was with me. He was always next to me, to my right, at the holy altar, but he never got involved.
It was a wonderful experience, and it taught us how to be.
But the sixth, I think I had as of now 6 second priests, and maybe more. I ask them, you just have to be honest with me. Tell me what's happening. I'm not in your home, and don't be afraid. And always we have to embrace them. And the word second priest, synepimerios, which is a bit more. We're co-workers in this vineyard, and it's very important for us to encourage them, to be honest, and to teach them so they can go out there and feel good about the ministry. It's so important. And one basic rule that I have is that when you leave from here, when we see each other, we're still going to be talking to each other. That's a basic rule that I have for myself, that when you leave this parish and I see you someplace, you will be talking to me. You're not going to be angry with me. And as of now, by God's grace, has happened, and I hope it continues happening.
Well, I think the way you've learned to be a proistamenos is very blessed and very generous and gracious, and that's so important.
Well, I felt it, and I have to give it. Yes. I felt that, and I have to give it.
I can't remember who it is that said this, but we can only give what we have received. And when we have received the grace and the love of God, it's there to be shared with others. So you're giving it. This isn't a question that I actually had prepared for, and I hadn't prepared you for it, but I'd like to ask what your thoughts are. I hear both ways, that it's good for husband and wife, especially clergy husband and wife, to have the same spiritual father. And then there are others who say it's okay not to have the same spiritual father. What is your perspective on that?
We have the same spiritual father, or at least of the same family. What I mean by that, maybe physically is not the same person, but they are of the same mindset.
They have the same spiritual father.
So it's of the same family.
And that's just a matter of demographics right now. Because we did have the same for a long time, and then we had to change, and Father's willing to go farther than I am. So that was just really a matter of convenience, but they're both under the same epitrachilion. That's the same. So it's like, I think it's extremely important because it's, you know, a tree, the root, and then, you know, it's hard to take a piece off and graft it onto another tree. You kind of all have to grow from the same advice. And our children we all had the same spiritual father for years. Now they also have different ones, but still they're all under the same spiritual father.
Okay.
So I think it's important for it to be the same. That's personally has worked for us. I can't speak to having different ones.
Yep. So that's what's worked for you. That's what I'm asking. What's worked for you? And again, we're all different, but I'm asking what's worked for you.
But excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do know, I mean, of, you know, one particular instance where the priest and the presbytera had different spiritual fathers, and that did create an issue because they were told different things about basic marriage issues.
Yes.
So it can create some friction.
Yes. And then others will say it can create another perspective then for couples to work it out on their own with whatever freedom they're given in that. So it's, different models work. You know, Irene, I know that you have lived with arthritis for many, many years, with rheumatoid arthritis. And and again, this isn't one of the questions that
I thought it might come up actually, though.
And I hope you don't mind, but what might be some of the unique challenges as a clergy couple where one has been living with a chronic illness, one is living with a chronic illness?
Father doing way more vacuuming when he was young than he ever thought he would have to do. You know, I want to say I've managed. When we were at seminary, I got really sick and we were away from our families and I couldn't even hold a 2-week-old. I was having to drag the kids, you know, down to the city for my shots, and now you just give them to yourself, but then you couldn't. It's been a challenge, but not one that it actually I see it sometimes as a blessing because it has deepened my reliance on God and that he's in control. Because I can do whatever meds are out there or whatever, but if it's supposed to work, it'll work, and if it's not supposed to work, it won't. But Father has always been extremely helpful and the children as well. But you know, I've been in and out of remission several times, but no, it at times, you know, the house wasn't exactly probably how it should have been, but you know, if you can't pick up things or bend over, but you know, it worked out, can I say.
And is this something that you've allowed, is the parish aware of it?
We were just talking about that with Father the other day, that it's, you know, a lot of autoimmune diseases are invisible diseases. You know, you live with it, you live with the chronic pain and fatigue, the inflammation, but whatever. It's only now that I'm having to wear like braces on my hands, and I was sometimes then limping a little bit, that people have said, and this is after 23 years, what's wrong, Presvytera? Did you injure yourself? So it, you know, I guess I'm getting a little older and it's progressing a little faster, but yeah, no, it hasn't, you know. If anything, when they find out, they're like, oh, let me open that for you, or let me do this, or.
So you have when people ask, you will tell them what it is?
Oh, yes. I don't have any problem. You know? Okay. And then, of course, they say, you're too young. I'm like, no, it's not osteoarthritis. It's a rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah. But there are some clergy, there are some who choose not to let anybody know you know, if there's illness. And then others who are more open about that. And, you know, you mentioned that it's a way that you've become more dependent on God. It really has been an opportunity to surrender yourself more to him. Has it been an opportunity to surrender yourself more to him through allowing him to work through others in supporting you?
I don't know, because I don't think, you know, unless someone asks me, I'm not going to go and advertise it. And I don't think I've been at the point yet where I've really needed to say to somebody, I need you to come to my house, please, and help me do this.
Okay. Are you at the point in your life where you would do that if you needed it and that you could ask for help?
I mean, I have an adult daughter who lives 2 miles from me.
Okay. So
that, you know, and sometimes we do go to Costco together so she can, you know, with the cart. Yeah, I don't know. I would probably just wait and see if I felt better the next day. I don't want people to then say, oh, I helped Presvytera, because I don't know. But I don't have a problem saying if they asked me, but I really haven't, you know, when the kids had chickenpox during Holy Week in New Jersey, people would they took the kids to Holy Week services, and then they stayed with them so I could go to Holy Saturday morning. So that was
Yeah, I guess that sort of leads to another thought. You know, we are often in a place of giving as priest, as presbytera. And you both mentioned at the beginning, one of the blessings is how you have been embraced and received God's love through the people in your parishes. Talk a little bit more about that, both giving and receiving. I know that, you know, in the scriptures we read, it is more blessed to give than to receive. However, and I can't remember who said this, it's one of the Desert Fathers, it's more blessed to receive hospitality than to give it. So we have those two truths standing side by side. And where, in terms of being a clergy couple and a clergy family, anything more that you might offer, given, because we are in a place where we're giving and we're giving and we're giving so much of ourselves on a pretty regular basis. What about the receiving?
It's the small things that we receive. Could be an encouraging word. It could be, I have someone who comes to see me for confession, and he always makes sure he brings me water. That's his gift. He says, Father, you are here, and I don't know what to give you, but he always brings me a bottle of water.
It's always
as simple as that.
It's a great lesson in.
That's so beautiful.
It's a great lesson in really nurturing humility, because you almost feel, you're like, we're just, you know, we're called to this ministry and vocation. We're doing it. You really kind of almost feel like you don't deserve this like huge gallon of olive oil from these people's vats in Greece, you know, or the lady whose husband dies and she's so appreciative for Father having been at hospice with him that she bakes you all these biscotti and she keeps sending them. You're like, you have to learn how to receive with humility, which is not easy.
Yes. And you know, here the administrators, we are in my office right now, behind this wall, are the two administrators. Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm here in the afternoon, always they will prepare lunch for me.
Oh, they always feed him.
Always, no exception. I mean, how can I?
So you've learned how to receive too.
Well, to our best ability.
I don't know if we've learned it with grace, but
well,
humbling.
I hope you're not grateful.
Your mention of the olive oil. When my husband does house blessing, we have several people in our parish who have family members with olive groves in Greece. And when he brings home some olive oil from Greece, it's like gold in our house. It's like, don't ever bring anything, but if you bring that olive oil, absolutely.
Yes.
Once they gave me a bag of rice.
A what?
A bag of rice.
Rice. It's, you know, it used to be the priest, you do a sacrament, here's a chicken, you know, I mean, you know, so.
What wonderful opportunities God gives us in so many ways. There was a question that came in, a very practical question. At what time do you have weekday evening services vis-a-vis your 5 to 7 family dinner time? In my parish, our parish, everything seems to happen at 6 o'clock.
Okay, well.
The
kids are older, it's different now.
The only 6 o'clock.
And this is from a young clergy mother, yes.
6 o'clock during the week, we have only Vespers on Saturday. And of course, during the Great and Holy Lent at 6 o'clock, it's on Wednesdays.
Pre-sanctified. Mm-hmm.
So after that, on Wednesday night, we all have dinner together at the church during Lent. As I said, I've been always the proestameno, so I always tried to put meetings 7 and up, after 7.
So that you have that family time. Okay.
And so we're not a parish that has Vespers every night. I know some parishes do, but we don't.
Yeah. Well, many parishes don't even have Vespers on Saturday night. So yeah, but you do on Saturdays at 6. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then we have dinner.
It's prepared. It's ready.
The research shows that ministry is the loneliest vocation in America. It's pretty much across the board. And by extension, this isolation often extends to the wife and family. You've touched on some things here, but what are your thoughts on this?
Irene.
Actually, a clergy lady, I was talking to a couple of other Presvyteras who are about my age. Everyone's younger than I am now, maybe a little younger.
I know.
And we were saying that now that our children are older and, most of them out of the house, it's lonely now. It wasn't lonely when the kids would come home from church. If you didn't go out to eat, you'd, have a meal. Sunday was not the family meal. It had to be another day unless it was late. If you were in a big parish with sacraments. The kids had their homework. You'd watch a movie together. Everyone would be in the house. There'd be activity. Now on Sundays when I go home, and I know people with young children are saying, I wish I had that quiet. Mm-hmm. But it's Sunday and I'm by myself, so that, and sometimes I'm driving home and I'm like, oh, another Sunday on my own, because Katerina is not always home on a Sunday. She has her own things that she does. So yeah, and I don't want to really take my married children's family time, which is a Sunday, and say, hey, can I come over or whatever. So now I haven't found it really that, except and then we go the whole thing about friends, you have to be really discerning. And a presbytera that I really respected before we went to seminary said to me, you have to have a relationship with Panagia, with the Theotokos, through prayer, through paraklesis, through akathis, because when all your other so-called friendships fail, she will be there for you. And I always hung on those words. I'm not saying I have a great prayer life of prayers to the Theotokos, but I always remember that she said that. And I think it's harder also for the wife, because I think the studies show also that women need friends. Men, it's different. If they have one other priest or one person they can really talk to, that's fine. A woman, she kind of needs a group, and then you find out that they did stuff without you, and then you're like, so, there's always that as well. So, but my children kept me very, very busy, so and now the grandchildren that are local, sometimes you're like, when are they going home?
Father John is a priest. Would you have anything to offer about that?
I found that question a little bit difficult to answer. When we discussed it with Irene, I think my reaction was, I'm busier now than ever. At this age and that part of my ministry, I'm busier now than when I was probably 20 years ago. I don't know what is happening, but there's so many things that we have that I would like to accomplish by God's grace and with the help of the parishioners, that we are on the go. I mean, we have projects of great magnitude at St. John's here, if that is called iconography, consecration, the day school, 7th and 8th grade in the next 2 years, if that's called Greek school, pastoral visits, confessions. Sometimes I wonder, with a diminishing amount of sacraments, weddings, and baptisms, if we had the same amount of sacraments as we had, a peak year for me was 2004, I would have no idea of how I would be able to handle those things.
So,
I mean, it would be
but
hectic.
can we be busy and also lonely
Well, I look,
and isolated?
I isolated. I don't feel isolated because I know who to call, and I have those people to call. But I do welcome during the week time alone to do my thing.
So you seek solitude.
I definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. And
Definitely.
solitude is very different from loneliness.
Definitely. Loneliness? No, because okay, maybe that's a bit, I feel the love of my family. I feel the love of Christo and Panagia. I mean, I feel the love that I have received from my spiritual father, my father confessor. I mean, there are my parents. Okay. I mean, of course, the test is always in front of us. I say that, and at the same time says, have you really been tested? I don't know what is after this interview, what's going to be happening in our lives. I mean, we have always, have I been tested enough?
Sometimes I say, when's the other shoe gonna fall? And he says, don't test God. He knows what he's doing,
Well, this has been wonderful. We've actually gone a little bit over at this point. Really appreciate what you've had to offer, not just your time, but to offer yourselves and from your own life and your own experiences. I've really enjoyed this conversation that we've had. And I know a lot of people, we've only had 7 participants today, but these webinars get a lot of views after the fact. So because a lot of people simply can't make them during the time when we air them. But thank you. Father John, could you close us in prayer, please?
Before that, may I say,
yes,
thank you. We
Yes,
thank you
for all your work.
For the continuous work that you're doing for the clergy couples and all the efforts that you have put and all the staff. May the Lord strengthen you and illumine you, continue to illumine you during this very holy season, and you and your husband as well and your family.
Thank you.
Mary, which is someplace, and Mari, which is someplace in there behind the screen.
And also a thank you to Leadership 100 for their continued support, for offering this platform for us and the funding for it. So thank you, Leadership 100. Okay.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God the Father, the communion of the Holy Spirit be upon all the clergy families and our parishioners and all those people that the Lord will put in our path, that we may serve the gospel of the resurrection. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Carrie.
you.
All right.